Hey guys, this is Wandering into the Woods from the creators of Adventures with BeeGee. I'm Jarrett, and this is Linda.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're going to be talking about the separate adventures we've been on recently. I took the girls on a short backpacking trip, and Linda.
Well, I had the chance to go on a ghost tour in DC.
So for my adventure, me and the girls, we went to Goodwater Loop. That is a 26-mile trail, 28-mile trail around Lake Georgetown. It passes through oak and ash juniper, and it hits bottomland hardwoods and prairie grasslands. It's also all the way around Lake Georgetown, and that lake is a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers controlled lake, and it's formed by the North Fork of the San Gabriel River. It's one of the better trails in the area because it's actually longer. It has free camping all throughout it, so there's free campsites. There's also paid campsites if you want to have, an RV, or you need to have a restroom or a physical campsite. So you can stop, pay at those sites, or you can just throw up at the primitive campsites. And you always have water because I've never seen Lake Georgetown go dry.
So, is this a state park or county park? Well, who runs it?
So the park is run by the actual Corps of Engineers, and it's kind of like a national park, but not quite because it's Fed money, and a national park pass will get you into these things. So it may also have like some Texas funding as well, but for the most part, it's Corps of Engineer funded and run, and like where you get the real reservation. So for like a physical campground, you still use like a .gov place. I think it's all tied into the national park like reservation area.
Okay, cool.
So with Linda gone, I was like, it'd be fun if me and the girls went on a backpack trip, and they're getting older, so we decided to make it short. I was thinking 3 miles out, 3 miles back. So when I got home, I packed up real quick, checked Alexa to see what the weather was going to be like. She said the lows were going to be like 53, so that's fairly warm for camping, so I wasn't too concerned. We got out to Cedar Breaks because that's almost always the location where I start these trips from. And we walked out to our campsite. We're old pros at it. We didn't have an issue. It was familiar. Everything was good. We set up camp. I ate some dinner. They ate some dinner. When the sun went down, it definitely started cooling off much quicker than I was expecting. So I put us in bed a little bit earlier than we normally would have, to keep everyone warm, especially me. So I got Angela into her Barker bag, BeeGee under her fleece blankets, and I crawled into my sleeping bags. And if you're curious what a Barker bag is, it is a sleeping bag for dogs. It attaches to your sleeping bag down at the feet area, so your feet can stay warm and they can stay warm. And it's got a little head hole that their heads pop out of.
Oh, they must look so cute.
Yeah, they look cute and weird.
I mean, you've shown me pictures, but I've never been camping with you in a cold enough environment where we've had to put them in a sleeping bag, in their sleeping bag. So I've never seen it in person.
And part of the reason I put Angela in it instead of BeeGee is she's a squirmer.
What do you mean by that?
She just, like every hour she gets up and runs to the corner of the tent or just squirms around and gets out from under all the covers. But, once we got our camp set up, we were all in bed. Around 10 p.m., we had multiple large groups of backpackers go through at night. So
I bet Angela didn't like that.
they did not like it at all. That's when everything really started going downhill, and it's the first time I've really experienced too many other people night hiking, because that's usually me out there, not other people.
Oh, wait, but before we get more into that, have we taken the time to properly introduce our friends, BeeGee and Angela, so that we make it clear we're not talking about people, we're talking about our dogs?
So if you follow Instagram or Facebook or the blog, you'll know that Angela is a 28-pound white terrier, and BeeGee is a fluffy 50-pound black terrier.
And I felt the need to explain that because Angela has what people would say is a people name. And the reason for that is because when we adopted her, her original name was Angel. I guess because she's all white. But in the valley, in the Texas Valley where I'm from and where we were at the time, Angel is also a Hispanic male name. And everybody who would say hi to Angel thought that Angel was a boy. And I did not like that. I felt Angela was offended by that. So we switched her name to Angela. So there's a story on Angela's name, and she, I bet you, was the one that was most feisty and angry about the backpackers darting across, outside of your tent.
Oh, they were just walking. They weren't
Really?
darting.
Well, I feel like to Angela they were darting.
Maybe. So yeah, multiple groups came through. I want to say all the way till like midnight, and that's when things went downhill for us there. Angela got progressively more squirmy, so she was flopping around in her sleeping bag, not able to get out. And then at some point, she was able to squish her body out through the head hole.
Did she really do that?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She squirmed through the head hole, and she did the normal thing where she goes and stands in the corner of the tent, and no matter what the temperature is, you just go to the corner and sits there.
I'm still trying to figure out the logistics of her squirming out of the
I don't know.
bag.
I don't know how it happened, but it did because it has a little cinch strap, so you shouldn't just be able to slide out of it.
Right.
But she must have worked it till she could.
Wow.
At some point, it got into the low 40s after she squirmed out, or maybe before, and so I didn't. Angela probably would have been okay in her bag, but BeeGee was not warm enough in her fleece blanket, and Angela was definitely not warm enough outside of the sleeping bag.
In the corner.
Yeah, in the corner. So we had to go with the backup plan, which BeeGee is a good girl and knows what to do, and that is where I open my sleeping bag up all the way like a blanket, and I cover the girls up and I cuddle them. And for a little while, Angela was okay with that. And then on the hour, every hour, she would get up and walk to the corner of the tent and sit there, and I would have to wake up and drag her back under the sleeping bag so she wouldn't commit suicide.
I've always wondered about Angela. She's a terrier, seems to be more of a terrier mix than BeeGee. And so I wonder if she can hear more of what's going on near the ground, and that's what doesn't allow her to enjoy camping as much as BeeGee can.
Maybe. I have no clue what it is about her because it started really positive and she quickly decided that she was going to go back to Angela ways. But we survived the night. When we woke up, there was a lot of moisture out. And even more surprising, there was quite a bit of frost that had formed on my backpack.
Oh, wow.
So we may have been at least part of the tent was in a pool of cooled air, so it was even colder than that, and it was down toward the freezing area. So
wait, so Alexa had told you it was going to be like, what, 53 degrees or something like that?
yeah, it was going to be 53 degrees.
But it ended up frosting in the middle of Central Texas.
Well, my phone said what location was 42 in the middle of the night. But, I mean, that's just an average temperature. You can have areas of pooled air that are colder or hotter. Like, haven't you ever been walking on the trail?
Well, no, I believe you. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. It's just crazy.
And so we packed up. Everything was real wet. I let them out of the tent for a little bit, and they were just happy. I figured they'd be a little colder and more miserable, but that was just me. Trying to keep them warm and alive throughout the night.
Were you projecting that to our dogs?
Yeah, yeah. And then we hiked back 3 miles, no problem. We came back to the house, got everything dried, hung up, and I took a nap because I think I deserved it.
I think you did after that night. So I recently had the chance to visit DC for the first time. And what I have found through our experiences in Texas is that a great way to get to know a city and its history is through a ghost tour. Now, by ghost tours, I don't mean that Jared and I are actively out there looking for ghosts, because quite frankly, I'm a little skeptical, and so Jared is very skeptical. But ghost tours are a great opportunity for you to get to know the history of a town and get to see its sights and look at them from a different angle, usually at night. And so it's a great, fun, and unique way to get to know a town, especially when you haven't been in before. So so when I got there to DC, that very same night, I took a tour with DC Ghost Tours, and they have the original Ghosts of Lafayette Park tour. And it starts, I think they have it set up so where it starts almost every night. I guess because it's a major city. It's not like in smaller cities. In Austin, they're usually only on the weekends, but DC seems to have them on a nightly basis. It starts at 8 o'clock and it goes on until 9:30. And what you do is you go meet your tour guide, who is dressed in a Victorian outfit. right outside the Dolly Madison house, which is located on 8th Street, right between 15th and 16th Streets. And
What's a popular landmark that's in that area that, like the general population would know?
the White House.
The White House? Okay.
So it's in that same area as the White House. But again, I was by myself, completely by myself, and I didn't have you to help me as I usually
No one
do.
in your tour either? Just you?
No, it was just me. I didn't
your
know.
tour?
I didn't know. Well, I didn't know anybody in my tour group.
Okay, but there was people there.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about when I got there.
Okay.
So I'm trying to look at like, where is this house? Like, what are they talking about? Well, it's a house that's currently under renovations, and it's being repaired as well, because it's obviously been around for more than 200 years. So
Obviously.
it needs it needs its I guess its renovations. Anyway, so I figured out that was the house we were supposed to wait outside. And in the meantime, I just took the opportunity to go look at the White House, just the outside of it. And I went and saw also the administrative building, which nobody ever talks about, right next to the White House. It's also beautiful, breathtaking. And it's actually where, from what our tour guide said, a majority of the administrative staff works at.
Okay.
So after taking a few pictures of the White House and the administrative building and some of the beautiful houses in the vicinity, I met our tour guide exactly where they said, right outside the Dolly Madison house, and she was dressed in her Victorian outfit. And it was a small tour group that night. It was a Monday night in the midst of the coronavirus outbreak. So it was not a large group. It was 5 of us that were there. It was a mother and a young daughter. She was around, I want to say 8 or 9 years old, and a father and a daughter. The daughter was around 19 years old, from what she was a freshman in college, or she is a freshman in college. And then you had myself, and I was the loner out there.
Did the small group make your tour better?
I think so. Compared to other groups, and it was so easy to hear the guide. There wasn't as much action, I think, going on around DC either, which limited the noise around us as well. But you have to keep in mind that area is generally quiet because there's a lot of Secret Service agents anyway in that area. And I think that tends to keep things more quiet than otherwise you would have more noise. I don't know. That's just my impression. My first time there, it was my first night there, so I feel like it was very quiet, and I feel like anybody else who goes on this tour might have a very similar experience.
Okay.
So, like I said, we met at the Dolly Madison house, and it's undergoing renovations. And it's the house where, according to our tour guide, Dolly Madison lived, and after her husband, James Madison, passed away. And so this house was where she would be looking at people going back and forth between the White House and a gentleman's club that was close to her house. And by gentleman's club, we don't mean the modern kind of gentleman's club that some people might think about. We mean more like an old-fashioned salon where politicians used to go.
Saloon?
Sorry?
Saloon?
No, like a salon, like
Salon?
a parlor.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the sort of things where like the old politicians of back in the day used to
Yeah,
go
like a
and
country
meet.
club.
Yeah. I would say it's more like a country club, yeah. And but only men were allowed, so it was a gentleman's club. And so she would, they would, these gentlemen would be walking across her house, and she engaged them in conversation and try to get them to join her party, etc. She was very involved with politics until her death. So her house was perfectly situated, close to the White House, really close to that gentleman's club. She was in the perfect place to keep playing politics even into her old age. And I won't go into what goes on exactly with the ghost tour, like ghost theories that are happening there, because they are interesting. But I do want to save it for those that want to go on the tour. Really exciting stuff that might be going on. Also, I think what makes it a little bit more freaky is knowing that even though these buildings look like they're separate from each other, it looks like the Dolly Madison house is separate from the building that's right next to it, and then that's separate from the from the current Court of Appeals that's sitting where the Gentlemen's Club used to be. All those buildings are actually connected today. So it makes for some interesting ghost stories, which you can listen to if you go on this ghost tour. So another interesting site that you get to see is the current day appeals court, which is the site of that former Gentlemen's Club. And what is of note, or one of the things that are of note with that Gentlemen's Club, is that it is the former site of where Philip Barton Key II was killed. Now, a lot of us are not familiar, with Philip Barton Key, but I'm sure many of us are familiar with who wrote the Star Spangled Banner. Francis Scott Key. And Philip was Scott's son. And he was the U.S.
Less famous?
Yeah, definitely less famous. Although, if you, maybe after the story, you might want to argue he was definitely notorious. So he was a U.S. attorney in D.C., and he had an affair with a young lady named Teresa Sickles. And Miss Sickles was married to a congressman named Daniel Sickles. Well, again, I'm not going to go into the details of the stories that you'll listen to in the tour, but what ends up happening is somebody drops a letter to Congressman Daniel Sickles, and these are the letters saying, anonymous letters saying, your wife is having an affair with Philip Barton Key II. And Daniel goes to his wife, to Teresa, and confronts her about it. She admits to everything about the affair. And what does Mr. Sickles do? Well, he didn't have a lot of automatic weapons back then, but he had at least 3 guns with him. And he made sure that all 3 of them were loaded. He goes to the Gentlemen's Club almost across the street. It's across the park from him. And he confronts Mr. Key, and he demands that he get out. Mr. Key doesn't want to, but he's out there anyway. He doesn't have a chance to escape from Mr. Sickles. Mr. Sickles takes out 1 gun, shoots him. Philip tries to run away. Well, Mr. Sickles has another gun, and he takes it out and shoots him again. And then he takes out his 3rd gun, and he ends up killing Mr. Key. And Mr. Key ends up dying in that club. And to this day, there are rumors of the ghost of Philip Key haunting this area, right across from the White House. And not only him, but Miss Teresa Sickles possibly as well. There have been reported sightings of both him and her in the place where that old Gentlemen's Club used to be situated. Another interesting, or what I found interesting or of note, is that Mr. Sickles, he goes on and, of course, has a glorious career in the Civil War, goes to Gettysburg, gets his leg shot off, and he ends up having a memorial for his leg every year.
That sounds like the right kind of thing to do.
Oh, and by the way, the reason why he goes on to have a glorious military career and mourn his leg every year, is because he got off on a temporary insanity plea.
Interesting.
After killing Mr. Key. He claimed that he was in the throes of passion after finding out what happened between his wife and Mr. Key. Somehow still had the frame of mind to load 3 guns and then goes and kills Mr. Key. But he still managed to pull off the temporary insanity plea. So those are just 2 of the great sites and many sites that you get to see just within 1 square, because that's really all you walk around in this tour, just 1 square. And there are other stories that you get to hear about and listen, and you get to meet all these characters, and you get to see all these buildings, and there's just so much history. And I learned it took me an hour and a half to learn about what was going on in only 1 block of DC, and it just made me crave learning more and more about DC. So I hope I have the chance to go back and take another DC ghost tour. Well, that's it for our late winter adventures, and we hope you've had almost as much fun listening as we did on our trips.
Thanks for listening, guys, and we hope we encourage you to wander into the woods. Also, make sure you follow us on all our social media accounts. You can find us most places at Adventures with BeeGee.